He slammed the folder on my desk and said, "You'll never make it in this department without me." The words echoed in the small, gray-walled office like a sentence being passed down. I remember the hum of the air conditioner, the stale smell of burnt coffee, the flicker of the fluorescent light above us. My hands trembled, but I didn't let him see it. That's what he wanted, fear. His name was Captain Mark Daniels. Everyone in our precinct in Houston called him the Old Man. 23 years on the force, 3 commendations, and a smile that could charm a brick wall. When I joined the department, I admired him. He told me I had potential, said I reminded him of himself when he started out. I believed him. God, I was so naive. It started small, late-night work sessions, compliments that felt half sincere, half strategic. He'd stand too close, his voice soft but heavy. Then came the comments about my clothes, my looks, the way I fit in with the guys. At first, I laughed it off. You learn to. In places like ours, women either laugh or leave. But one night, everything crossed the line. He called me into his office after shift. The others had gone home. It was just us. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and said we needed to talk about my future. My gut told me to leave. But I stayed because I didn't want to look weak. He leaned across the desk and said, "You know, Emily, promotions don't come easy. But I can make things happen for you." I froze. My heart pounded so loud I swear I could hear it echoing against the filing cabinets. I pushed the glass away, stood up, and said I had to go. His voice changed instantly, low, cold, and threatening. "Don't make a mistake you'll regret." That night, I sat in my car outside the station, staring at my shaking hands on the steering wheel. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't, because I knew something had just shifted. From that moment, I stopped being the quiet rookie. I started watching, listening, keeping records. What he didn't know was that I'd already started saving everything: emails, texts, shift logs. I didn't know how far I'd go yet, but I knew this wasn't over. I wasn't going to let him win. A week after that night, I started noticing the looks. Not from him, those I expected. I mean the sideways glances from other women in the department. The quiet nods, the quick silences when I walked into the locker room. At first, I thought they were judging me. Then one afternoon, while I was fixing my hair in front of the mirror, Officer Rachel Myers came up behind me. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 1 year. She said quietly, "He got to you too, didn't he?" I froze. "Who?" I asked, even though we both knew the answer. Rachel gave a small, tired smile. "Don't play dumb, Em. I tried to report him once. You know what happened? They transferred me to patrol in the worst part of town. Night shifts. Alone." She walked away before I could say anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every word he'd said to me. The compliments, the veiled threats, the way he always called me kiddo when someone else was around. And now I realized, this wasn't just about me. He'd done this before. Probably more times than any of us knew. Over the next few days, I started paying attention. At lunch, I sat near the women in admin. In the hallways, I listened when his name came up. And slowly, the pattern began to form. Quiet stories, small incidents brushed under the rug, transfers, resignations. There was a whole whisper network of women who'd been cornered, silenced, or scared away. And all of them thought they were the only one. I began writing everything down. Dates, names, places. If I was going to do this, I needed proof. But I also needed allies. That's when I called Lena, my best friend since college. She was working as a paralegal at a firm in downtown Houston. I hadn't told her much about my job before. Never wanted to sound like I couldn't handle it. But that night, I told her everything. Every detail. Every message. Every threat. When I was done, she didn't say anything for a full minute. Then she said, "Emily, this isn't just harassment. It's abuse of power. And you need to be smart about this." She helped me set up a private email off the department servers. She told me to back up every file on an encrypted drive. I started taking screenshots of texts, saving them in hidden folders. Every word, every timestamp. Still, it was hard to act normal. Every morning, I'd see him leaning against the hallway wall, coffee in hand, talking to the guys like nothing had happened. Sometimes he'd smirk when he saw me, like he knew I was too scared to do anything. But what he didn't know was that I'd already sent my first anonymous complaint. And this time, I wasn't the only one. Because Rachel had quietly told me, 3 more women are ready to talk. You're not alone anymore. That night, I sat in my car again, same parking lot, same steering wheel. But this time, my hands weren't shaking. This time, I felt something else rising in me. Not fear. Not anger. Something colder. Something stronger. Determination. It's strange how fear slowly turns into focus. I used to flinch when I saw his name pop up on my phone. Now, every time it buzzed, I smiled, because it meant more evidence. He'd gotten cocky. After years of getting away with everything, he thought he was untouchable. He'd text me things like, "You should be more grateful, Emily. I've done a lot for your career." And I'd reply calmly, "I appreciate it, Captain." Every message, every timestamp, every word was a nail in his own coffin. Meanwhile, Lena was helping me build a paper trail. Dates of shifts, discrepancies in reports, patterns that showed favoritism toward women who played along. We even found one who'd been transferred after refusing to grab drinks with him. It was ugly, but it was something I could finally hold in my hands, proof. Then, one morning, Internal Affairs announced an anonymous complaint had been filed against a senior officer. The station buzzed with gossip. Everyone pretended not to know who it was about, but I saw the look on Mark's face. He knew. He stopped talking to me in public. Started calling me into meetings again behind closed doors. Except now, I recorded every one of them. One afternoon, he cornered me near the parking lot. He leaned in and whispered, "You're playing a dangerous game, sweetheart. You think anyone's gonna believe you over me?" I didn't answer. I just looked him in the eye and said quietly, "We'll see." He didn't like that. Within a week, I was suddenly written up for insubordination. Then came rumors someone leaked that I was seeing a married detective. It was textbook retaliation. But it didn't scare me this time. It confirmed everything. Because by now, I'd already met with someone outside the department, a female journalist from the Houston Chronicle. Her name was Maya Lopez. She'd been covering misconduct cases in law enforcement for years. When she heard my story, she didn't blink. She just said, "You're not the first one he's done this to. But you might be the last." We agreed to go off the record, for now. She gave me advice that changed everything. Don't just tell them what he did. Show them how the system let him do it. So that's what I did. Every policy violation. Every ignored complaint. Every woman who'd quietly left. I traced the pattern. And when I showed it to Lena, she said softly, "Emily, this is bigger than him." Maybe it was. But for me, it was still personal. Because I remembered that night in his office. The way he smiled when he thought I was powerless. I wanted him to see that same look crumble. The day finally came when Internal Affairs called me in. They said they wanted to clarify my anonymous report. I sat across the table from two investigators, heart pounding, hands steady. And for the first time, I said his name out loud. Captain Mark Daniels. It felt like ripping off a chain I didn't even know I'd been wearing. They asked if I had proof. I smiled. Plenty. I handed over the drive. That night, as I left the station, the sun was setting over the Houston skyline. I rolled down my window, let the air hit my face, and whispered to myself, "He's not going to win this time." When Internal Affairs took my statement, I thought it was over. Naive, right? I thought I'd done the hardest part, spoken up. But the truth? That was only the beginning. The next week was chaos. Whispers spread through the precinct like wildfire. People stopped meeting my eyes. Some avoided me completely. A few, mostly women, gave me small nods in passing. That was their quiet way of saying, "We see you. We're with you." But Mark, he acted like nothing had happened. He strutted down the hall with his coffee mug, laughing, joking with the guys. It was infuriating. He even had the nerve to wink at me during roll call one morning. That smirk, like he already knew the outcome, made my blood run cold. I went home that night and cried until my head hurt. I wasn't scared anymore, I was angry. Because I could feel it. The department was closing ranks. 3 days later, my captain called me in. Not Mark. His superior. He said, "Emily, you need to understand how serious these accusations are. We can't afford bad press right now." Bad press. That's what they cared about. Not what he'd done. He told me to take some personal time. That was their way of saying back off. But I didn't. I used that time to double down. With Lena's help, I gathered affidavits from 3 women who'd worked under Mark years ago. One of them, a dispatcher named Holly, had resigned after he made advances she reported. She'd never been contacted about it again. When I called her, she started crying. "I thought nobody cared," she said. That broke me, because I knew what it felt like, to think you're alone, screaming into a void. Maya, the journalist, wanted to go public. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed the investigation to play out. I still had hope, thin, fragile hope, that the system might do the right thing. Then one morning, I walked into the station to find an envelope on my desk. No name, no return address. Inside, a single printed photo. It was me, leaving the Internal Affairs office. On the back, someone had written, "Stop before you ruin your career." My stomach dropped. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just fighting him anymore. I was fighting the entire system that protected him. I called Lena in tears. She told me to pack a bag and stay with her for a few days. I did. I barely slept. Every sound outside the window made me jump. But fear only lasts so long before it turns into resolve. And by the third night, I'd made a decision. If they wanted me silent, I'd do the opposite. I'd make sure everyone heard me. I called Maya the next morning. "Let's do it," I said. "Let's go on record." Her voice didn't even hesitate. "I'll meet you downtown. Bring everything." That was the day I stopped being a victim. That was the day I started becoming a problem for them. The morning the story went live, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages. Missed calls. News alerts. Houston PD under fire for alleged misconduct by senior officer. That was the headline on the Houston Chronicle. Maya had done it. She told my story without sensationalizing it. She wrote about the culture of silence, the unreported complaints, and how women were punished for speaking out. She didn't name me directly, but everyone who knew the department knew exactly who it was. By noon, reporters were outside the station. Mark came out first, walking fast, head down, his usual swagger gone. I watched from across the parking lot, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd be sick. He looked at me once, just once, and I'll never forget that look. Shock, rage, and something else. Fear. That afternoon, I was called into HR for an urgent meeting. 3 people in suits sat across from me, all pretending to be calm. One of them asked, "Did you speak to the press?" I didn't flinch. "Yes." Silence. Then another said, "You violated confidentiality. There will be consequences." I laughed. I actually laughed. Consequences? For telling the truth. They didn't know what to do with me. I wasn't scared anymore, and that scared them. When I walked out of that room, Rachel was waiting by the elevator. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "You did it." That moment meant more than any apology or medal ever could. By the next day, the city was talking about it. The mayor's office released a statement saying they were deeply concerned. Internal Affairs reopened the investigation. Mark was placed on administrative leave. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But the backlash came fast. Anonymous emails. Threats online. One said, "You're ruining good men's lives." Another, "You'll regret this." And maybe for a few nights, I did regret it. Not because I wanted to go back, but because fighting alone takes everything out of you. Lena reminded me to eat, to sleep, to step outside. But I couldn't rest until it was done. The hardest moment came when my father called from Illinois. He's old school, quiet man, a retired cop himself. He said, "Emily, are you sure about this? Things like this can follow you forever." My throat tightened. I said, "Dad, if I stay quiet, I'll never forgive myself." There was a long pause. Then he said softly, "Then do what I couldn't." That night, I sat at my kitchen table, same spot where I used to study the academy manual, and realized I wasn't that rookie anymore. I wasn't the scared woman in the parking lot. I was someone new, someone stronger. A week later, Maya called. "They're moving to suspend him pending charges. You started something, Emily. Other women are coming forward." I didn't speak for a few seconds. Then I whispered, "Good." Because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making sure no one else had to go through what we did. But I had no idea the fight was far from over. Because Mark wasn't done with me yet. I thought once the story broke, he'd disappear. Lose his job, face charges, vanish into the background like they all do. But predators don't fade quietly. They fight dirty on their way down. 2 days after his suspension, my car alarm went off at 2 a.m. When I ran outside, the back window was shattered. Nothing stolen. Just broken. A warning. The police came, my own colleagues, and took the report like it was a parking ticket. One of them, a guy I used to work night shifts with, said under his breath, "You really stirred things up, Em." I wanted to scream at him. He broke me for years, and you're mad that I stirred things up? The next morning, I found out someone leaked my name online. My inbox filled with hate. Liar. Career killer. You just wanted attention. I shut the blinds, unplugged the phone, and sat on the floor. That was my lowest point. I remember the sound of the fridge humming, the clock ticking, and me, just breathing in that quiet, terrified stillness. Lena showed up that night. She didn't knock, she used her spare key. She took one look at me and said, "We're going to fix this." She called Maya, and within hours, they had arranged a meeting with a victims' rights attorney. We met at a small office downtown, tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The attorney, Donna King, mid-40s, fierce eyes, listened silently as I told her everything. When I finished, she said something that stuck with me. Men like him count on silence. But silence is a choice. You've already made yours. Donna helped me file for a restraining order and pushed for an independent investigation outside the department. When the papers were served to him, I heard he went ballistic, screaming in the hallway, threatening to sue everyone. Good. Let him feel cornered for once. But then things got uglier. Someone sent a fake memo claiming I'd falsified reports. My name was suddenly being questioned in online forums. A local talk radio host even hinted that maybe this officer had a personal vendetta. It was a smear campaign, and it was working. People love to doubt women when the story gets complicated. One night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. A voice whispered, "You think you won, but you just started a war." Then hung up. I sat there for a long time, phone in my lap, staring at the reflection in the dark window. I looked tired, hollow, but underneath it, angry. And that anger kept me alive. Because I realized something, he wanted me scared again. And I refused to give him that satisfaction. I sent every threat, every message to Donna and Maya. Maya called later that week, her tone urgent. "Emily, the city council is calling for a full public hearing. You're going to be subpoenaed to testify." My stomach dropped. Facing him again was the last thing I wanted. But I said yes. Because if the system wouldn't protect women quietly, then maybe it was time to make noise loud enough that they couldn't ignore it. And deep down, I wanted to see his face when he realized I wasn't backing down. Not this time. The day of the hearing felt like walking into a storm I'd been preparing for my whole life. I woke up before sunrise, sat on the edge of my bed, and just stared at my hands. They weren't shaking this time. Outside, Houston was already awake, traffic humming, coffee shops opening, life moving like nothing was about to change. But for me, everything was on the line. When I got to City Hall, cameras lined the steps. Reporters shouted my name. Some called me the whistleblower officer. I kept walking, head high, my badge still pinned on my blazer. It was my quiet reminder. I earned it. He didn't get to take that from me. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Rows of seats filled with officers, lawyers, journalists, and civilians. And then him. Mark sat at the far table, flanked by two attorneys in expensive suits. He looked smaller, somehow paler. But when our eyes met, that same smugness flickered in his expression. He still thought he could twist this. When my name was called, I stood, took the oath, and sat in the witness chair. For a moment, I could hear nothing but the hum of the microphone. Then the questions started. They asked me to recount everything, from the late-night meetings to the threats, the retaliation, the evidence. I spoke slowly, clearly, refusing to let my voice crack. At one point, one of his lawyers interrupted. "Ms. Carter, do you have any proof that my client's actions were coercive?" I looked right at Mark. "Yes," I said, sliding a folder across the table. Every text, every message, every incident report he tried to alter. "It's all there." The lawyer hesitated. The room went quiet. Then I added softly, "You wanted proof? You're looking at it." Mark's face turned red. He leaned toward his mic and said, "This is revenge." She couldn't handle discipline. There it was, the arrogance, the condescension, the same tone he used when he thought no one would ever believe me. I took a deep breath and said, "You can call it whatever you want, but the women after me won't have to live in fear of you anymore." Gasps rippled through the room. The panel chair cleared his throat. "Captain Daniels, you will refrain from further comments." The rest was a blur. More testimony, more documents, other women coming forward one by one. Rachel spoke. Holly did too. Each story different, but the same pattern, his manipulation, his control, his lies. By the time the last witness finished, the room was silent. You could feel the weight of truth sitting heavy in the air. When they adjourned, I stepped outside into the bright afternoon light. The cameras flashed again, but this time I didn't hide. A reporter shouted, "Officer Carter, do you have anything to say to Captain Daniels?" I paused, then looked straight at the lens and said, "Yeah, tell him I'm not scared anymore." That night, I sat on Lena's porch, watching the sun set behind the Houston skyline. She handed me a cup of coffee and said, "You realize you changed everything, right?" I shook my head. I just told the truth. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just the truth. It was power. And it was finally mine again. The next morning, I got the call. He'd been terminated pending criminal charges. And for the first time in 2 years, I slept through the night.
The morning after they fired him, I woke up to silence. No buzzing phone. No pounding heart. Just quiet. I made coffee, opened the blinds, and for the first time in months, sunlight didn't feel like a threat. I thought I'd feel victorious. Triumphant. But what I felt instead was emptiness. The kind that comes after you've been holding your breath for too long. Lena said it was normal. When you fight that hard for that long, she told me, winning doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like finally putting the weight down. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt. Part of me wondered if I'd destroyed something bigger than him. If maybe I'd burned bridges I could never rebuild. But then I remembered all the women who'd left because no one believed them. And I realized, maybe some bridges deserve to burn. A few weeks later, the city issued a statement, apologizing, promising reforms, new protocols, and training programs. It was good press. But real change? That was slower. Messier. Still, I saw something shift in the department. Younger women started speaking up more. Even the men, some of them, started calling out the old jokes that used to slide by. One afternoon, Rachel stopped by my desk. She smiled and said, "Every time someone reports harassment now, they call it an Emily file." We both laughed, but I felt a lump in my throat. It wasn't about fame or headlines. It was about survival, and turning that survival into something that meant something. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single line typed neatly on white paper. "You didn't stay silent. You saved us." I sat at my kitchen table again, the same table where it all started. The scars were still there, invisible but real. But I wasn't the same woman who once cried in her car outside the precinct. Now, I was someone who'd learned the hardest lesson of all. Strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the steady kind that keeps showing up even when no one's watching. Sometimes I still drive past the old station. I see the new faces walking in, full of hope and trust. And I think at least now they'll have a chance. Because one man underestimated me. And in doing so, he taught me exactly how powerful I could be. I didn't destroy my life. I reclaimed it. Piece by piece. Truth by truth. And maybe that's what justice really looks like. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe if you want to hear more true stories like mine.